Hi there, this is David, and today I want to talk about the 3DS eShop, which we all know is closing down on March 27th. So we have a scant couple of weeks in order to make some purchases, especially if you don't want to get, screwed buying it physically. Because right now, a lot of these RPGs that are available on the eShop, if you buy them physically, you're talking like triple digits. If you buy them digitally on the eShop right now, you can get them between 20 and 40 bucks. So we're going to be looking at 35 different games today, and that's a lot. So I'm going to be grouping them together in similar genres or similar franchises and kind of talking about them together. Another thing, before we truly get started, is that you can't actually add money directly to your 3DS anymore, any kind of funds. What you have to do is link your 3DS to your Nintendo Switch and then kind of transfer them over, and you can do that over in the Nintendo Switch eShop. So the first couple of games that I want to talk about today are the Shin Megami Tensei games, and there's quite a few of them over on the 3DS. You have Shin Megami Tensei 4, you have Apocalypse, which is the direct sequel to 4, you have Strange Journey Redux, and those three games, they're pretty typical SMT in the same vein as Nocturne, or it's kind of like dungeon crawling and things like that. Strange Journey is kind of, strange. It's the same thing as SMT. It takes place in Antarctica though, like in the real world. Then there is Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner Soul Hackers, which is a dungeon crawling game that was originally released back on the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation, but only in Japan. That is on the 3DS as well. So if you want to play that, it really it has relation to Soul Hackers 2, but it is a completely different game. They're two entirely different genres almost, insofar as that. More Shin Megami Tensei games. There are the Devil Survivor Overclocked and Devil Survivor 2 Record Breaker games. And those are both turn-based strategy SMT games, and they are remakes of games that were originally on the Nintendo DS. So those are more in the vein of Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre, something in that regard. So if you're a fan of SMT, then you're definitely going to want to check those out. Then there's also the Persona Q games. There's Persona Q and Persona Q2, which are, again, SMT, dungeon crawly type vein games, in the same vein as something like, SMT4, Nocturne, Etrian Odyssey, but it is starring Persona characters, and it's a little bit more accessible than Etrian Odyssey. Now, speaking of Etrian Odyssey, here it is. Let's talk about that. There are 5 games, count them, 5, on the 3DS that you can now pick up on the eShop. We have Etrian Odyssey 4, Legend of the Titan, 5, Beyond the Myth, then there's Nexus, then there's Etrian Odyssey Untold, The Millennium Girl, as well as Untold 2, The Fafnir Knight. So there are 6 total games in the Etrian Odyssey series. Untold and Untold 2 are remakes of Etrian Odyssey 1 and 2 that were originally released back on the Nintendo DS. 4, 5, and Nexus are 3DS exclusive. Also, remember, there are going to be remakes of Etrian Odyssey 1, 2, and 3, only the DS versions though, over on the Nintendo Switch. So the games on the 3DS aren't part of that remake, so if you do want to pick these up, now is the time. This is another dungeon crawling type game, has some auto mapping, some quality of life features, but it is in general very hard, very classic. It has kind of like wizardry type classes, but it's really bright, really colorful. It's a lot of fun. I really did enjoy my time with the Etrian Odyssey games. You have 6 different party members in your party rather than 4 or 5, so that's really nice. And I do think that this would be a good time if you want to get into that series to do that now. Next up, we have Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology, another remake. This is a remake of Radiant Historia, which was originally released back on the Nintendo DS. And why Radiant Historia doesn't have its own franchise and multiple sequels by now is beyond me. because this was the best game, bar none, on the Nintendo DS and one of the best on the 3DS. It involves time travel, multiple paths through the world, great tactical combat. It is just an absolutely lovely, wonderful game. It has voice acting now, animated cutscenes. It's just really, really well done. If you're looking for a classic JRPG in the same vein as something like Chrono Trigger, look no further than this. I loved Radiant Historia. You have like a world map, you have everything that you could possibly think of. The combat is wonderful. It involves like traps and pushing the enemies around and stuff. Great party members, great characterization. I cannot say enough good things about Radiant Historia. Now there's Dragon Quest 7 and 8. So we have 2 Dragon Quest games here, and these are really expensive if you try to buy them physically right now. Not so bad on the Nintendo eShop. Dragon Quest 7 was originally released on the PlayStation, and it is one of the longest games in the series. It is like upwards of like 200 something hours, but the 3DS version really did streamline it and make it much more user-friendly. It is still incredibly long though. Dragon Quest 8 was originally released on the PlayStation 2, and it was amazing on the PS2, but the remake has added some extra characters and just extra content and stuff, and both of these games are just fantastic. Dragon Quest 8, I would say, is one of my absolute favorites in the entire series. 7 is up there, but it's definitely not as good as 8, but I would highly recommend you playing both of them if you are into classic JRPGs. Next up, we have Yokai Watch. There are 3 Yokai Watch games, and then multiple versions of the Yokai Watch games. So, Yokai Watch isn't too expensive physically. Yokai Watch 2 has 3 different versions. There's Bony Spirits, Fleshy Souls, and then a 3rd version called Psychic Specters. And that version is around $250 right now physically. So you really do want to pick these up on the 3DS if you can. Yokai Watch 3 is going upwards of $300 physically. So definitely pick these up on the eShop again while you can. Now that level 5 is back in town, we might see some Switch ports, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Yokai Watch 1 was ported to the Switch, but only in Japan. Maybe they'll bring this over now. Who knows? But if you don't know anything about this game, it's basically Pokemon, but taking place in Japan, and utilizing yokai, which are like ancient Japanese spirits. So it's a lot of like Japanese lore and Shintoism and stuff like that. It's pretty cool if you're into Pokemon. Now we have another level 5 IP. We have Professor Layton, and there are 3 Professor Layton games on the 3DS. There's the Miracle Mask, the Arzon Legacy, and Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. And these are kind of mystery, visually novel games. I've never really been into them myself. And I do know that there is a new Professor Layton game being announced for the Switch. We don't know if it's a remake. We don't really know anything about it. We don't even know the title. But we know that something is coming out in the West for Professor Layton on the Switch. Maybe it's remakes of these. Maybe it's a collection. We don't know. But if you are into these games and you do want to pick them up, now is the time. I sound like a broken record going on about this stuff. For Mario and Luigi RPGs, there's Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga and Bowser's Minions, which is a remake of Superstar Saga originally released back on the Game Boy Advance. And I want to say that was the very first Mario and Luigi game. And that was kind of a spin-off of Paper Mario. Then there's Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Journey, Mario & Luigi Dream Team, Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, which is kind of the Mario & Luigi series meets the Paper Mario series together. So if you're into these games, pick them up. They have a lot of humor. They have a lot of charm. They have a lot of time and energy put into them. These are not cheap, throwaway, cash grab games. These have the Nintendo seal of approval on them, and they are great. If you like turn-based JRPGs, simple stories, but stories done well, you will like these Mario and Luigi games. Another long-running franchise to cover here by Nintendo is Fire Emblem. 4 Fire Emblem games here on the 3DS. There's Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Fates Birthright, as well as Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. So Valentia is a remake of the second Fire Emblem game, which is Fire Emblem Gaiden back on the NES, has a lot of added quality of life improvements, and it's pretty well done. Fire Emblem Awakening actually has a pretty cool story behind it. Early in development, Nintendo actually told the developers for Fire Emblem that, hey, if your game doesn't sell well, the entire Fire Emblem franchise will just be canned. It's just gonna go to the wayside, you'll never see it again. So the developers were like, oh my god, we gotta make this game good. So what did they do? They actually made it accessible! They turned off permadeath! Hallelujah! Man, who knew? I've been waiting for them to turn off permadeath for ages. And because of that, because of the quality of life improvements, because of other things like fast forwarding, and like being able to turn off battle animations, and most importantly, the permadeath is gone, it has just been wonderful. And Fire Emblem went from something very niche, something that not a lot of people knew, into almost a household name after Awakening. So yeah, we have a lot to thank for that, I've got to say. I am very thankful for that. We all know how much I love my turn-based RPGs with job systems and with world maps. So of course, I'm a huge fan of Bravely Default and Bravely Second. Bravely Default, it has its fair share of issues, mostly in the second half, where you kind of repeat. It's like Groundhog Day, the game, but Bravely Second really did clean that up. However, there are so many great improvements. The Bravely series, I believe, is one of the very first JRPG series that really took a step forward into modern quality of life improvements. It's the first game that I can think of that really lets you fast forward battles, that lets you turn off encounters if you don't want to deal with them. That just, it's just so helpful in the way that it helps you grind and do all sorts of other stuff. And believe me, it is kind of grindy, but it is worth it. The stories that they tell, the world map, the exploration, all the job classes. If you're a fan of something like Final Fantasy V, then definitely check these out and download them today. Act quick. And finally, The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. I don't want to hear it. I liked this game, so I don't want to hear how it's not a JRPG. I'm just bringing it up. Just bringing it up, people. God forbid. So, Zelda and I have a long and tumultuous history. I played the original back on the NES whenever I was a little kid. Really enjoyed it. I played the second game back on the NES when I was a little kid. Really hated it. Then I played Link to the Past on the SNES, and that's where I fell in love with Zelda. It is still today probably my favorite Zelda game in the entire series. Rivaled only by maybe this game. You know why? Because it takes place in the same world. This is Link to the Past on steroids. This is Link to the Past's sequel, pretty much. And you can like kind of turn into almost like Paper Link and kind of go against the walls and slip through these little cracks and everything. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun. It's super charming, super cute. It's not too complicated. It's not 3D. You don't have to deal with like Z targeting or anything else like that, which I hated. But otherwise, I loved this game. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it's a lot to process, and you don't have much time to grab these games on the 3DS if you want them. Remember, you only have until March 27th to pick these up, and it is a little bit difficult to access funds on the 3DS shop too, so you have to do some workarounds now, but I do think that it is definitely worth doing. Hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good day.